Welcome to God with Ortega and Bond. This is episode number 45. We're recording it on Monday, December 21st, 2020 at 6:32 p.m. Eastern Time. And we're just continuing, this is like less than a minute after our last episode, on exploring God. And just like as a brief reminder, I'm also exploring, being on 4 cups of coffee that I ordinarily don't drink coffee. And now this fosters that I really am not a drinker. I'm like, every once in a while. But, all right, so Josh, again, let's go from this idea that to the extent we understand that we don't have a free will, we not only better understand the nature of reality, we better understand the nature of God, and we absolve ourselves from all this pain that the free will belief mistakenly afflicts us with.
Yeah, George, something just dawned on me here. So we're doing a show about God, and we're doing it for bringing, where we, you were taking alcohol. I did the last episode, and it was a spiritual breakthrough for me. And we're also integrating this illusion of free will, and we're really pioneering. And I want to lay out for the audience just really quickly, because all this might sound very strange and weird, but this might blow a lot of people's minds to realize that both of these things are how religion started out, right? Several times it's had to start over because the human ego, or for whatever reason, God didn't let us keep to this path of truth, right? So one of the most obvious is with Martin Luther, with the Reformation. Most people don't know, the Protestant Reformation, Luther wrote this book called Bondage of the Will. He wrote a lot of books, right? He said this is the most important book he wrote, and you burn all the other ones. And that's what he said, right? And he said that was the whole basis of the Reformation. And now here we are, and Christians don't talk about this issue, right? And so the Buddha pretty much did the same thing, because the Buddha was born in Hinduism, right? They didn't have the concept of free will. St. Augustine basically made that up in the West. But they kind of had it in this other way where Hinduism was divided between this very stoic self-deprivation form to be moral and be righteous, whatever, this more indulgent or ritualistic form, right? And the Buddha saw that neither of them were working for everybody, but they were both very dogmatic. And he, meditated and ascertained the true nature of consciousness and realized that we don't have this ability to do one type of dogma and that give us this magical free will ability to be righteous all of a sudden. That had to be a personal pursuit, right? And even Jesus, I think, if you understood that Jesus was bringing the same message, right? Right around when Jesus was born, there was a large faction in Judaism, the Essenes, who really knew this, right? And they were the Dead Sea Scrolls. So this has been going on for a long time, and humanity's been trying to evolve consciousness to realize this and to really latch onto it and hold onto it, and not let the ego or institutional corruption, suppress this message, right? And also how that parallels is, as we mentioned last episode, alcohol and other plant medicines, ways to enhance and shift consciousness to understand what consciousness is and have different experiences of reality and of God, is basically how all these religions were also founded, right? Even through meditation, it's well documented now, even through brain scans, that meditation can, like Buddha did, could alter consciousness in as profound ways as many of the teachings.
All right, Josh, I want to get back to this is partly an experiment about the influence of alcohol on spirituality.
You're making me jealous, Jordan. I have to go get some.
All right. All right, so let's talk about this. What is alcohol doing? Anybody who drinks, who has experience with drinking, understands that it lessens anxiety, lessens social anxiety. It lessens inhibitions and self-preoccupation so that a person essentially feels closer to whomever one is addressing, feels calmer about one's existence, and basically alleviates the anxiety that often actually serves as a barrier to understanding and communicating with God more fully.
Yeah, George, I want to interject really quickly for the audience. If anybody's been following the series or just tuning in. So this is something new. We just started last Friday, and it's not going to be a every time thing talking about it. It's the holidays. It's the week of Christmas. And we're just starting out, so we want to have a good grasp on it. And maybe, try once a week and then integrate what we learned, how to feel, to connect with God in that way. And I actually, spent probably 15 hours. We did the last one on Friday, today's Monday, over the weekend, re-listening to the 2 episodes we did over and over again and extrapolating. Before that, we introduced that we're going to be writing a book and using this series. We're going to outline a book, and we start talking that out. And then we're going to talk through that outline and transcribe that verbatim almost into the book. So you'll have the videos to go along with the book. We thought to bring in, we started, hey, let's say break into the bring. We thought that wasn't going to provide a lot to the outline. But as I was going over this material and the things that we came up with, we were both pretty blitzed, and making the connections, I actually realized that there's so much good content there. Right? And it was really profound. It was healing for me to, to realize that, all these theories and ideas and, the pursuit of happiness in this way, the pursuit of understanding God in this way, is working, right? So we're going to get back to doing that as well, and we're going to continue to talk about some of the things in Revelations. But a lot of it just centered for me around self-acceptance. I was stumbling over my words. So a really interesting point that George and I were playing with is I was listening to it, and then I realized I could speed up the video to 2x, right? And that was just mind-blowing because, the main impairment, if you can call that, with alcohol that's noticeable is slow speech, sluggish cognitive tempo, right? Which I have naturally, so it's even worse, alcohol. But when I sped it up, I realized I was judging the words I was saying because they sounded slow, and that was keeping me from getting the message that I was trying to deliver to myself. So just some fun playing around with consciousness and realizing that we're not in control of our consciousness. We didn't create our consciousness. God did. We didn't create a human being. God did, right? And so with that comes so much self-acceptance, so much appreciation for the weird little quirks of life or consciousness, and that's been profound to experience.
All right, Josh, I'm glad you reminded. We were talking about the beneficial effects of viewing the last Friday's episode at 1.5, 2 times speed. And what I'd like to propose is for this episode, rather than going 28 minutes, which is our standard, let's go 56 minutes and present this in double time as episodes. I guess it would be episode
43.
Right. Yeah, there's one episode, right? No, it's 44.
45. I don't know. We'll figure it out later.
45. So yes, absolutely. And then, because you mentioned in our meeting before, where when you were viewing our Friday show in double speed, you were actually able to more effectively, listen to it and understand it and accept it. Also, like we want to see if this is something that the audience can do also. So this is excellent. So now we've got 18 minutes left on this episode, another 28 minutes. So I want to return. So this is awesome. So we're going for like much longer time. And again, the challenge is like we're with people all the time. I mean, there's people on TV, there's people online, we walk around everywhere, there's people everywhere. So we're kind of like familiar with people and ourselves. We're not as familiar with God. So so the idea is to shift our focus.
Yeah, George, that is interesting. So one thing that happened is it was almost the alcohol was, my impurity about doing the alcohol on TV, doing an episode about God, I can't use the word intoxicated or drug because those aren't allowed, whatever.
Enhanced and medicinal, yeah.
Yeah, right, gave me the excuse to, because I was stumbling over my words if you saw it, and I couldn't talk right, normally I can anyway, this was much worse, and it gave me the excuse to kind of shift the blame, to the alcohol.
Just wait, I mean, like, you're basically talking at a level that far exceeds most people, so like, now, even when you feel you're not talking all that good, you're talking much better than you do.
Okay, so anyways, it allowed me to shift the blame to the alcohol, and that allowed me to free up to just really be honest and vulnerable and say, I'm struggling with talking. And when I look at how I'm struggling with talking, and I try to realize why that is, I realize I'm getting lost in my head or I'm judging it too much, right? And so when I played it back at the 2x speed, it was funny because it didn't sound like I was struggling talking, but then I went into explaining this whole conscious, what I was experiencing, my experience, that I wouldn't have let myself do otherwise, right? And so, if we speed this up, it'll be interesting to see, I want the audience to do the same thing, to realize their ability or how their mind's connecting with what we're saying because either it's too slow or too fast or, whatever, and realize that, use that to bring into their own lives, and realize that they might be having a conversation with somebody they love, but their mind, for whatever reason, is not being able to connect to it because the other person made them mad yesterday, or they were mad at themselves today, or too much anxiety or stress in life, right? And use that, either to fall into more love and compassion for the self and the other person in the relationship and try to soften or make the conversation more empathic, or like George suggested earlier, say, hey, let's continue this conversation later and go talk to God about it, right? And meditate or whatever you do when you do that, and pray about it and see what solutions come up and how we might be judging, right? So anyways, I appreciate the opportunity and how George, talking me into this.
You actually bring up something that's so important. When we're talking with ourselves, when we're with each other, when we're talking with each other, I think it would benefit us to see ourselves and each other as God, to see the God within us. Because again, as you and I know, we're only ever God manifesting what God is compelling us to do. So in a sense, we are God. We're just not the part of God that determines what to do. But to the extent that we can relate to each other and see the God within others and ourselves, I think that would be a monumental leap in our evolution as a species.
Yeah, George, I think, the first thing that came to mind when you said see ourselves as God is, that almost makes me blame myself more for my traditional notions of God. But this new enlightened reality of God is not new. It's just been suppressed and, squashed out of our cultural awareness, that God did create everything. God is everything and everywhere, all causality. So, my mistakes, my failures, my anxieties, insecurities, my uncomfortable anger, whatever it might be, that is God. And that's, the part that I need to accept to truly understand and truly be able to live in a deeper relationship with what God is, how God is affecting our lives and what love is, right? Because, it's really kind of the ultimate form of love to be able to understand concepts and integrate them into our views of ourselves and each other and our relationships.
Yeah, I want to continue with the track that you brought us to, just this idea that, like, yes, it's about God, but as people, it's more about people. In other words, like, we're interacting with God through people in our lives, so that while it's beneficial to cultivate a relationship with God as the only being, it's also extremely beneficial to see God in others and ourselves so that we can deepen our connection with each other. So that, and all right, so here I'm trying to connect the conception that God is everything, that we're God, that God controls everything, with the goal of that facilitating, enabling, and enhancing our interaction with each other.
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy, George. It's crazy how easy it seems logically and rationally, right? Because when bad things happen and there's someone to blame, we blame the person, and that causes a problem in the relationship. And this is unscientific, it's unspiritual. So when we can shift it to causality, true causality, and accept that we have this kind of hypocritical idea of God, right? Because when it comes to any other aspect of science or reality, right, we see true causality, or we're much more able to accept it, right? If a tree dies that we planted, well, we look at the soil, right? We don't blame the tree. We look at why the tree died. We say, oh, that's a tree, right? And trees are trees. Something must have killed it, right? Nothing must have caused it. We say the tree sins. The tree deserves to go to hell, right? And the same thing with animals. We're able, if we have pets or we come into contact with, animals. And I think largely, we talked about this last time, I think one of the reasons is because animals don't talk. So there's not a sense they can hurt us in the same way that humans have been trained to hurt each other through words. And what we talked about on Friday was, we limit ourselves to this verbal consciousness and even talking to God in this verbal consciousness. And it's such a narrow part of reality. Like, few of us can actually articulate in words what we're truly experiencing in life, right? So I think that's what came to mind when you said that.
All right, so I had a direction to go, then I moved away from it, and I'm not sure where it is now, but I'm like, so all right, this is a perfect example. It's a perfect example. Again, like, I'm done with this. So the idea is like, all right, I'm waiting right now for God to instruct me in what to say next. While Josh, while you were talking, I had certain ideas of where I wanted to take our conversation next, but then toward the end, it just what I wanted to talk about no longer seems as relevant as what could be talked about.
That's probably because I usually change what I'm talking about mid-sentence or mid-conversation because I forgot what I started out with or God led me in a different direction, right?
Well, I mean, but basically, I think that that can be seen as an opportunity to lead to another kind of understanding that may not have been apparent before. All right, let me just free myself of what I conceive of as the train of thought, the kind of logical progression of our discussion to more general understanding of what might be the next topic to express or the next statements to express. And the first thing I have to acknowledge is that it hasn't come to me yet, which is fine. That's the thing. Sometimes, a lot of times when our thoughts don't come to us when we want them, as we want them, we think, oh, there's something going on. It's not positive. It's not favorable. But no, I think we need to understand that when God causes us to not yet know what to say next or think next or feel next, these are opportunities, I believe, for leaps of consciousness. So, and I may be extending that a bit too much in every case, but all right, what I want to express now is that, all right, I'm going to simplify it. Basically, I'm accentuating the reality that what I say or not, what I think or not, is not up to me.
Yeah, George, the way I like to phrase it is all struggle, conflict, mistakes, right? These are encounters with the illusions. These are chances to see the illusions, the illusion of this free will, illusion of this personal consciousness and self, right, that we've been taught. That's completely wrong, right? Otherwise, we just go about our lives doing what we do. Things come to mind and we never stop and think, where did that thought come from, right? So all these struggles and conflicts, even all opportunities are an opportunity to see the illusions, right? And when we do that, what we can do is we can turn this illusion into a technology, because underpinning all of it is how do we make things happen? How does that happen? How can we improve the way that happens so that more things come to mind? We have more things to pick from. We have more opportunities, whether it's a conflict, a fight we're having, and previously we would have thought we have a free will, and or it's just some evil sinner that's but we can't come up with a thing to say, right? But we can learn tips and tricks. I think we all have this. I think we all, ironically, we all have much more love inside us than we're allowed to show. And something that came to mind as I was relating, empathizing with your inability to come up with what to say, and I was reflecting back on all the times I felt an idiot in a conversation. Like, so an example of this is, I'm a man, so I was interested in how women think, how to talk to women, right? And women have the same thing for men. There's probably much more articles on that. But one of these interesting phenomenon is that they talk about don't worry about it because the woman doesn't care that much. And it actually makes sense. All women have to empathize when you're struggling and to connect through that, right? To the extent that if somebody's extremely autistic, and we all kind of do this, right? Somebody's extremely autistic. I like to use these terms as they science focused science, but right, we say, we make exceptions for them. We don't judge them. We treat them more lovingly socially when we're interacting with them. The same thing if it's an extreme instance of psychosis or what we have all kinds of silly names for, right? We say, oh, that person's having a crisis of consciousness. Even the same thing as it relates to alcohol. If somebody's really drunk, we change how we treat them, and a lot of that can be more loving, unless you're a cop arresting them for intoxication or something because you have to, because it's your job and you get fired if you don't. Even the cop, I guarantee you, 99.9% of cops have been in that position and they don't want to be a jerk. This situation might push them to it, right? So, we have this, and I think we all have it. It's the spirit of, how God made humans, and we're trying to get back in touch with that spirit of God and that understanding of God, right? And summing that up because religion's gone astray and crushed that in spirit.
All right, Josh, I want to extend the exploration of what you brought in, this idea of women. You and I are men, and we have this masculine mentality, but then our world is populated with women, and this is extremely salient to our conception of God, interactions with God and with each other. And what I want to start out with is that this idea that, according to history, God presented herself, and I'm going to use her because I think we've been using the term him way too much over the last millennia, and so God apparently introduced God's self, at least historically, to men, so we've been viewing God within this masculine framework. And so what I think we need to do, not just to more accurately understand the nature of God, but to enhance our relationship as men with women, who are our delight, and we're their delight, to this understanding of God as manifesting these feminine attributes of mercy and understanding and kindness and tenderness that we as men, value, but because our role has been to protect the family against, wild animals, all that stuff, we haven't developed nearly to the extent as women have. So I think, our exploration of God, we've got about 30 seconds left. Well, no, we've got 28 minutes and 30 seconds for this because it's extreme. So basically, I think it's important. I think it's very important to understand God in her more feminine manifestation in order to more accurately understand the nature of God and understand our relation as men to women and as women to men.
Oh man, George, I feel woefully inadequate to explore this concept off the cuff, but I'm eager to. I think, my mind usually starts to go toward the, reconciliation for how misogynists, trying to apologize. I mean, maybe that's what we should start off with. We're doing a God show, right? And the people who have talked about God historically, especially in the West, if you look at them, their ideologies were misogynist. Women's rights only came in recent history, women's right to vote even. So I think we should apologize as men, for that. In just such a short time, traditionally religions and people who talked about God thought women were lesser, more ignorant, whatever. And in just a short time, women are beating men in most academic subjects, or many academic subjects, right? If you look at the field of psychology, the desire to help people emotionally and what you could call spiritually, that's mostly women that are leading the way, pioneering, that are, putting in the time, into how to do this. Um, I think that's a lot. Maybe I shouldn't think. Maybe that should be one of the words we're not allowed to use to do this healing process. Yeah, I just have like, there's that question: if you could be anybody in history that you wanted to be, who would you be? And I never thought about this till now talking about it. But I might like to experience what it's like to be a woman from the perspective of like, I just can't fathom it. For one, I can't fathom how women are so much more likely to be able to dance so well than men. I can't dance, and like women, just as soon as the music comes on, their body's moving. Right? What's it like to be in the body, not stuck in the head like that? And I wonder if like that's almost part of so many of our struggles, right, as men, or even our struggles as both sexes, where I don't want to speak about women, but as for men, not being able to get into the body, get in touch with what they're feeling, and their emotions, and operate their consciousness from there. I can imagine being in a society filled with men like that is going to create a difficult time for women, especially when men are running the society.
I want to relate what I learned when I was practicing Orthodox Judaism in the mid-'80s. Someone mentioned to me that there's a belief within Judaism that when the Messiah comes, the world will be run by women. So what's the import of that? Yes, the world being run by men has been very useful to us. We've conquered nature, but it seems that's all we have to battle. Now that we've conquered nature, it seems that it would be wisest to bestow upon women, to allow women to lead us to this next, more evolved understanding of God and way to conduct ourselves in the world. And the reason I say this is because women are generally the nurturers of our world. They bring up our children. Their empathy, love is what they do best, what they do, I believe, far better than we men on a personal level, at least. So it could be that this evolution of humanity is enhanced and expedited by we men inviting women to take the lead in allowing our world to better appreciate and understand the feminine aspects of God that are about compassion and empathy and kindness and love.
Yeah, George, and I want to add to that, consciousness exploration, and maybe women have more access to God than we do as males, because if you think about it, right? So we're talking about the Fabringen and using alcohol or some plant medicine or whatever it is to alter consciousness, to shift it, to enhance it, or to change it, to realize, 5 minutes ago I felt one way, now my consciousness is doing something else, it's performing in a different way, and I'm not in control of that. So that sudden shift, right? And if you think about it, every woman has been, I want to say forced, but God has blessed them essentially to do this at least once a month in a very profound way, right? With their moon cycle. So, and for many women, it's a huge struggle, especially in the West, where we have this skewed view of consciousness and self and free will. Right? But, so many of them handle it so gracefully when when they realize they're just flooded with these hormones that are altering their perception, altering reality, altering their emotions, right? I mean, maybe that's what I should have wished for. If I could be anybody, I just want to be a woman PMS and see what that's like. I think I'd be horrible at it. I'd be some more we're not allowed to say on the show. So, and seriously, like, it's technology to shift consciousness, to watch it shift, and it's so humbling. It has to be so humbling. And likewise, childbirth, right? To watch another human being for 9 months, you know that there's a human being grow in your stomach. How much ego can you have? That's just got to be such a humble experience, and to watch it be birthed, right? And then to nurture it. I think women, or I feel, I suspect, obviously, women have a totally different consciousness that's evolved of capacities for love and for, relational tools and access to, what God would want us to be.
Yeah, Josh, I think it's time in history for we men to hand over the reins of our world to women. That we want to express to them what we as men need, what we as the world need, which they already understand to a great extent, but then let them take the lead. And then that's, theologically, this would be letting what's in Judaism known as the Shekinah, which probably has a similar Christian and Islamic term, but the feminine aspect of God evolve us to a higher state. Again, the masculine aspect has allowed us to subdue nature and conquer nature and have all these blessings, air conditioning, food, clothing, these material comforts and blessings. Now it seems that these actual blessings, unless properly managed, can be a great threat to our future. So we as men have not been able to nearly sufficiently address this limitation of our approach. So I believe, again, it's like as human beings, we allow women to take the lead and express God's feminine nature, express the need for non-material, less material, more emotional, more and again, I'm drawing somewhat of a blank when expressing this because I'm not a woman. Like a woman expressing this would be able to express this much more cogently. But basically the idea is, yes, that for example, if you have a family where the man, the husband, father is kind of like determining 90% of what happens, and the female mother, wife is determining 10%, that doesn't seem like a balanced kind of relationship that would be most conducive to the proper functioning of the family. In this way, for example, if you see Congress is run 80% by men, our world is probably run 80, 90 or plus % by men, and that's got to be equally limiting a recipe for the best optimum functioning of our world. So again, we have to frame this within the context of women are expressing an aspect of God that we can define as the feminine, but that is what our world, I believe, most needs now.
Yeah, George, I mean, you mentioned 80 or 90%, and really, it's probably much more than that, considering that most everything, all of our institutions and laws were, come from a time when it was 100% men, and we weren't allowed to even be priestess or, anything like that. So I think what you're saying is right on point, and to take it a step further is, I think this is what we're pioneering here with the show, is this open source, this very versatile form of consciousness where essentially, we can experience forms of consciousness that normally we wouldn't have access to. And part of that's going to be the feminine. So, let's just say, for instance, for whatever reason it didn't change, it was stuck to 80 to 90%. But what if that 80 to 90% of men had the ability to tap into female insight on demand whenever they needed to, if it best served humanity or best helped them do their job or whatever it was, right? And I think that's happening naturally, but I think as we break down these walls, these divisions of boxes that we create, that we put things in, right? So think about shifting consciousness using alcohol. How can we learn about ourselves, learn about consciousness, solve problems in our personal lives, solve problems in the world by shifting consciousness? I'm just curious, what would be that for me as a man to be able to do that, right? That might just be spending more time with women or developing, unfortunately, so many of our traditional notions of relationship are either purely work-based or, purely just marriage or not constructive, like not a team of I'm not drawing blank, but maybe like how psychologists have done it. I don't have a female psychologist I go to, unfortunately. Maybe that's the conviction I need to take away from the show. But if I had that, then I at least have that connection to get into connection with that part of God, the divine feminine aspect, at least once a week, right? Truly with the intentional focus of integrating that wisdom and that part of God into my life.
And Josh, that makes me think of is like there are two white guys, talking about God, and then we may want it as a goal to bring a woman into this show that so that feminine aspect of God, of human beings, is more productively, more rationally integrated. Now again, you don't have a free will, I don't have a free will, so I don't know if God's going to make this happen anytime soon, but it might be something that, at least with this God show, may help us to both better understand God and reflect that understanding in what we say. So again, before this episode began, we had no idea that we would be focusing on the feminine aspect of God and the feminine contribution to civilization. But this is where God has taken us. So let's bring this around to this understanding that we do not have a free will, but what we think and say and do and feel is what God is compelling us to think, say, and do and feel. And so God apparently is leading us to more fully explore and understand the benefit of enabling God's feminine aspect as reflected through women into our world.
Yeah, George, I guess if any women in the audience are hearing this and want to be on the show, just reach out to George you can find him through exploring.positiveConsciousness.com or whatever the best way to reach you is, George. And whatever you want to talk about, whatever it is you're passionate about. I'd like to personally hear some women rant about the injustices, that have been done, against women and against the divine feminine aspect of God and reality. Particularly, George, this will be an interesting balance to bring in. George and I were actually talking earlier, about what I would call radical feminism. I consider myself a feminist, probably, if in a context of feminism that allows a man to be a feminist. But I think there's a toxic feminism, more extreme. I think it's justified. I don't think it's right, accurate, or true. I think women should burn the place down a long time ago. But I think it's a backlash. Just whether it's racism, misogyny, or this new radical feminism that we've never experienced in our culture before. I'm sure the cultures have, some history. I think all of this stems from a lack of self-love, right? And I think it's very unfortunate that when this lack of self-love manifests into these political movements, right? Because we see it. And to be honest, or to be humble about it, I am not active in movements. I don't go to riots or whatever, so I don't know. I just see what's on the news, right? I think there's there's probably many types of feminism, and I think in all of them there needs to be. I'd like to hear more women just express from emotional, heartfelt space of the hurt, or the whatever, the struggle, the suffering, right? And if you want to yell and scream as well, that's fine too. I appreciate that. But I think that's what's missing from this debate or this transition society that we're going through. And I think that there's a lack of female leaders doing that. It makes sense, in my own rants and raves, I usually get pretty dang pissed off before I even take a stand about it. It could be a real issue that's causing not just me a lot of problem, but lots of other people a problem. And it's hard for whatever reason to muster up the energy to take time out of the day or change my lifestyle or whatever to go do activism or whatever. And by the time I get so mad about it, it comes out much less loving than it should. So anyways, that's some thoughts I had when I was talking.
Yeah, Josh, we need to bring a woman co-host to the show. And in addition to inviting her to express the injustices, the inefficiencies, the problems that afflict not just women but our society, because our global society, because women aren't appreciated and utilized nearly as much as they should be. I think we should invite and I guess this will be, this is apparently what God wants us to do, to find a woman co-host, perhaps. Perhaps not, who knows. But to ask this person to then describe not just the problems, not just what we understand to a great extent, or perhaps not understand well enough, but to take the next step of explaining to us as men and to the audience in general what we should be doing, what our next step should be doing to balance our reality so that the feminine is expressed, equally with the masculine, so that our world can be granted the maximum opportunity to express and feel our happiness and love and prosperity and well-being as well as we possibly can.
Yeah, George. I'm drawing a blank now. Yeah, I don't know how we go about that. Maybe we should have some conversations about that and make it happen. Even just an occasional guest would probably do us a lot of good. Where do we take this? I wish I had a better connection and knowledge of the religions and traditions that have been matriarchal, right? Or, at least had a strong balance, perspective. The one that's coming to mind, is the difference between bonobos and chimpanzees, the two apes who we have a common ancestor as humans from. Most of us think we descended, the misnotion is that we descended from chimpanzees, but that's not true. We're just as equally, similarly descended from bonobos, and that's the difference between the two societies. Is bonobos are matriarchal, right, and the females are the alpha females that lead the rest of the group, and the difference is just night and day. Astounding. Chimps are much more violent. They kill their own offspring, right? They kill each other at a much higher rate, right? The bonobos, they have lifelong relationships, where in the chimpanzees, the males have to leave because of the violence, right? But the males in the bonobo tribe stay in, and they have a very close connection, supporting connection with their mother for their life, right? And there's a whole lot of differences. One interesting, the way they divide, the way they evolved from the same species is that during a drought, the river that separates them in the whatever part of the globe they're in, dried up. Chimpanzees don't swim, and so they were able to cross the river, this huge river. Then the river came back, and the side that the bonobos were on was much more plentiful and much more abundant, right? So it's a parallel for where we're at in society, right? We had to come out of this scarcity of always being at risk for starving to death, right, and being invaded by me and offending, right? But now we're in this new phase of consciousness, this new phase of humanity, where we have abundance, we have machines and technologies that can provide everything we need. We just have a lack of love, a lack of true access to happiness that God wants us to have, right? And so, this female nurturing aspect of God, of reality, of humanity, of love, is probably much better at, or has insight certainly that the males obviously don't have to usher that in.
All right, and yes, while it's, I believe, as you were explaining, very beneficial to enhance the feminine influence in our reality, I think, and also more pragmatically to bring in a female co-host, to basically much better than you and I can express this feminine perspective. That actually, in order to do that more effectively, we as men want to express that feminine aspect of ourselves. That this is interesting because, I tend to be very liberal in that I believe that gays should be allowed to marry, be just accepted for who they are, but that
we only got 3 minutes, George. So
no, the idea is to express femininity, for us heterosexual guys, without having to move into the gay sphere. Because that's kind of more of a physical manifestation of this that's not really necessary to the expression of femininity within men. So in other words, we were all raised by we guys, and by mothers, as well as fathers. And so we have this aspect within us. So that, I guess what I'm trying to say is, in order to better express this feminine side, and perhaps, God is leading us to bring a woman to co-host this, who knows, to summon within ourselves this more feminine side that, again, that is separated from the gay aspect of physically. But personally, I believe it's mistaken. I'm sorry. I just believe that there's some miswiring. Again, I totally defend the rights to marry and do whatever. But just the idea is we as men can express this femininity while being as heterosexual as we are. And to the extent we do that, not only can we express God's feminine aspect of love and mercy and kindness more effectively, but more pragmatically from the show. This show may benefit from bringing in a woman to more regularly bring in this feminine perspective.
Yeah, George. You open the can of worms. Yeah, and I'm reminded of George Carlin, Bill Hicks, one of those great comedians that had a joke of I lost it. Dang it. It's a good joke. I'm going to finish this next episode. But essentially, once religion or anybody gets heterosexuality right, then we can judge whoever still shouldn't judge. But personally, I really appreciate the aspect of, we only got 20 seconds, I can't bring this up. But let's continue this next episode, and let's try to talk about the sexuality aspects as much as we can, because this is where women have been done a huge misjustice. It wasn't even until the 1970s that science even accepted that women are sexual equals to men, and that's horrible, and of course religion pioneered that. So we'll see you next time.